That fourth thought, the fourth thought in the set of four thoughts that turn the mind toward the Dharma. I first really got into Buddhism when I understood that it was not just another religion like the bad dream-like religion I was raised in. In fact, Buddhism is not a religion at all, but rather just a method to which to become more aware. That's it. It took a little bit longer for me to understand that Buddhism was not atheistic, as many claimed, but rather it was non-theistic, as in there is no one up there separate from us pulling the strings. Instead, whatever intelligence there is in the universe, up there, we are an integral part of it as well. It's not separate from us. There's no absolute separation like a class or caste between the historical Buddha and me. Only a continuum of awareness at which I am, sorry to say, on the lower rung. In the Catholicism in which I was raised, or so I'm told, even by the Jesuits, that there is an absolute difference between God and man, and even an absolute difference between Jesus Christ and myself. No continuum whatsoever. This I could not accept. To my mind, to me, I was sure that the very best of me, when I'm at my best, was like maybe the very worst of Jesus, and so on. However, when I made this argument to the Jesuits, I was clearly told no, and I had asked again and again and again. Anyway, Buddhism really clicked in for me when I first came across what are called the four thoughts. The whole title is The Four Thoughts That Turn the Mind Toward the Dharma. Or most is, commonly just the four thoughts that turn the mind, or just the four thoughts. These are the thoughts that turn the mind away from our busy day-to-day distractions towards something more profound for us. And here I only want to discuss that fourth thought. But for those of you who have not encountered the four thoughts, I should at least mention them. And they are: first thought, this human life we have is precious. We shouldn't waste it. And we should be used for some good purpose. The second thought, impermanence. Impermanence is a fact which we ignore at our peril. The third thought is the law of karma is unflinching. Everything we do has an effect and affects us. And the fourth thought, and that's the one I want to talk about, cyclic life, this life of ups and downs that we're living, is undependable. We will never, ever get all our ducks in a row. Not ever. Now these four thoughts were these were the Buddhist teachings that first got my absolute attention, because mostly I had been thinking almost the same things myself from studying the laws of nature as a kid. However, it was that fourth thought that gave me pause. What was that all about? Now, the fourth thought was hard for me to grasp, not because it is actually that difficult to understand, but because, like years ago, when I first tried to give up smoking or coffee, inside of me I did not really want to give them up. So my non-understanding was driven by my secret joy in still pursuing them. That secret joy had to be plumbed to the very bottom and found to be that it was causing me real physical suffering before I could tear myself away from it. And this took for me a long time. I was just sure that somewhere there was a back door to life, another way out. This is not uncommon. I'm not the Lone Ranger. With that fourth thought that turns the mind, the idea is that this life that we're living is inherently undependable. And the fact that this cyclic existence we're attached to, life as we know it, will eventually wear us down and out of memory before we figure it all out. Before we actually can get all our ducks in a row. But we keep trying anyway, and only we know if we're successful. And with the end of life, with death, there's no such thing as success, except perhaps, learning to fail successfully. Die with grace. Anyway, I was certain that I could somehow game the system and thereby get all my ducks in a row. I could master life so that it behaved as I wanted it. All around me, if I looked, other people were suffering, struggling, dying, being born, etc. But somehow I knew I was the exception, and that I, and perhaps only me, I could beat the system. I could make it all come out right. If only I was good enough, if I worked hard enough, if I was careful enough of everything, then for me at least life could be mastered. It could all be good. I could only have the high parts of the cycle and escape from the low side of life cycles that, I had repeatedly found myself mired in and unhappy. We each have to find out for ourselves that life is cyclic. You can ask yourself, does life go up and then down and around again? If it does, we go with it, like it or not, and so on. Which brings me to my point. Life can't be rigged, no matter how smart we are. Smart is not the same as intelligent. A wound smarts. Life can't be taken by force, by cleverness, by scheming, planning, or any other approach than that taken by the historical Buddha, which is why he took it. And that approach, or that path, is a path of awareness. In fact, the word Buddha in ancient Sanskrit simply means the aware one, or the awakened one. It's all a question of awareness. And we are all aware, but to what degree? The Buddha's entire path or method, which is called the Dharma, is about only one thing: waking up, becoming more aware so that we can respond appropriately to these ups and downs of the life that we now live, so that we can learn to fail successfully as life ends, which of course it eventually will. Now, without that awareness, we're subject to being torn apart by the tides and the cycles, these same ups and downs, a piece at a time. And there's nothing we can do to control it. We're never going to get all our ducks in a row, so to speak. So the point is that in my priority list, at the tip of the top of that list, before everything else, is the need to develop increased awareness so that I can respond to the exigencies of life that confront me daily in a useful and successful manner. It came as a huge shock to me to learn from the highest Tibetan Lamas that we have about zero chance of figuring out how to become aware of the true nature of our mind and existence without guidance and help. In fact, they used this analogy, which was a showstopper for me, and here it is. Imagine the entire earth covered by water. Into this water we toss an inner tube with a single hole in the center. Winds from the four quarters would push this tube every which way constantly. Now, in that ocean of water is one blind turtle that comes to the surface only once in 100 years and pokes his head out. The question is, how long will it take that turtle, as it surfaces, to coincidentally stick his head through the center of the inner tube? That, the Rinpoches say, is how long it will take us, life after life, to discover the true nature of the mind and be able to respond to life in a workable and enlightened way without a guide from someone who has themselves recognized the true nature of the mind. That's something to think about. And the moral is that we need help to learn how to become more aware. We need someone to point out to us how the mind works. And that's called the Dharma.